I worked so hard to be the dancer that I wasn't. It just turned out that I just wasn't the right fit for his company. That was a huge lesson that I learned, and I'm super grateful for it because it made me realize that just because one company doesn't want you doesn't mean that you're not worthy of another company or that you're not worthy of being a good dancer. That really changed the confidence in who I am as a dancer and as a person to say the worth and the value that I have for myself doesn't change just because of someone else's opinion.
I'm Caitlin, a former professional ballerina turned dance educator and career mentor, and this is the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I am here for the aspiring professional ballerina who wants to learn what it really takes to build a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. I'm peeling back the curtain of the professional dance world with open and honest conversations about the realities of becoming a professional dancer. Come along to gain the knowledge and inspiration you need to succeed in a dance career on your terms. Hello and welcome to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Sloan, and I am joined today by Courtney Nitting. Courtney is a professional dancer, currently dancing as a second soloist with Boston Ballet. She previously danced with Kansas City Ballet and Pennsylvania Ballet Second Company after spending a year freelancing in New York City. Courtney, I'm so excited to have you on today, and I want to start by hearing, why did you take your very first dance class?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm so happy to be here, Caitlin. Thank you so much for having me. This story is always so funny to me because I feel like a lot of people have this adorable, oh, I wanted a pink tutu and I don't know, I wanted to go move and things. And for me, the first time I actually took a ballet class, I didn't want to go in. My mom actually had to bring me back 6 months later because I was too afraid to leave her to take my first class. So I went in and I was like, I don't like this at all. And I left. And then my mom brought me 6 months later after asking, hey, do you want to try again? And I said, yes. And then that time I fully just went into the class and loved it. And I haven't stopped dancing since. And that was when I was 3 turning 4.
And what was your training like growing up?
At that point, my first little baby year of dance as a little baby toddler, I was in just a little local school where we did a little bit of tap, and I think I had one ballet class a week. And at the end of that year, I told my mom at 4 years old, which I still think is crazy to this day. And I say, I think ballet chose me instead of I chose it. For some reason, I knew at 4 years old that this is what I wanted to do because I told her I wanted to go to a real ballet school. Seriously, my mom put me in at a professional ballet school, the New Jersey School of Ballet, where I trained for 9 years. I was kind of always the youngest in my class by at least a year or 2 years. It was about when I started to turn 7 or 8 years old, the teachers started telling my mom and my dad that, hey, Courtney's really got something special, we're going to really keep an eye on her if she really wants to do this. So I hit 12 and they advised me to try to go audition for a couple summer courses for bigger schools. So I did that. And the first year I got into ABT New York, American Ballet Theater in New York City. So I went there. It was amazing, had a wonderful opportunity. And that was kind of my goal from then on, was to be a very classical ballerina who was going to be in New York City. And the following year, I auditioned again for American Ballet Theater, but I also auditioned for the School of American Ballet, which is affiliated with New York City Ballet. And I got in there, which I hadn't gotten into the first year that I auditioned. And so I said, well, I have to try here because what if I don't get in again? This might be a really good opportunity that I may not get again. So I went for the summer course. And the reason I tell this story is, and in this kind of order, is because this is what really changed the trajectory of my training. 2.5 weeks into the program, without signing any of those papers, oh, I want to be evaluated to be a winter term kid. My mom was like, no, you are 13. You're not going to go to New York City by yourself. Absolutely not. But they asked me to stay for the winter term anyways. Again, it was like I loved the program, being at the summer course so much. And I felt like the training, the Balanchine style, was something that I hadn't been exposed to before, was now something that kind of hit me in a different way. And I said, oh my gosh, this is me. This is what ballet is for me. So then at 13, I decided to transfer my training, and I was at the School of American Ballet for then 7 years after that until I graduated in 2016. So I've definitely had a lot of training and a lot of different styles in my background, but it really made some twists and turns that I didn't expect, but I'm so grateful for. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for all of the different teachers and exposures that I've had throughout my trainings.
How was that leaving home at 13? Did your parents come with you or were you just on your own?
Yeah, so luckily I live in New Jersey, so it's not
Hmm.
too far from New York City, but how far north I am from Manhattan was way too far for me to commute every day. So the first big switch was, where am I going to live? And actually at 13, I was too young to live in the dormitories. So luckily, my grandparents actually took me in as another kid at like 65. They were like, okay, we're going to have a teenager now again. And so I would live with them from Monday through Saturday because we had classes 6 days a week. And then my parents would come and pick me up Saturday. I would go home for that day, and then they would bring me back Sunday night, sometimes if I was lucky, till Monday morning. And I did that for all 7 years. I think the biggest switch too was that was also the year that I ended up changing to online schooling, which was also really different because I had always gone to public school. So I went from being in a classroom setting and having classmates and group projects and all this stuff to doing school on the computer all the time. So that was definitely a different change that had to happen, but I didn't picture that at all until it was happening.
So how did you feel about that? Were you homesick? Were you just like
Oh
so
my
excited to
God.
be there?
I mean, I was so excited to be at the School of American Ballet. I didn't even really understand the caliber of it until I was in it, which was unbelievable. I mean, we are very lucky at SAB, the accessibility that the students have to whether it be physical therapy, nutritionists, just going to see the ballet every single night, going to watch New York City Ballet every day. I mean, I have a box that's this big because I saved every ticket and every program I ever went. And my grandpa would go with me, 3 times a week. And then when my mom would come with me, we would go again and see multiple ballets and multiple casts. And the exposure and the knowledge that I gained from that was incredible. I think I was a little too stressed out as a kid sometimes because I wanted it so bad that, to be a professional dancer that I didn't get to necessarily always enjoy all of it because I was just in the world itself, which is I think my only regret that I would say I would tell my younger self is, hey, just enjoy it. Take a step back, because it's going to be gone before you know it. But I was actually so excited to change to online school. A lot of people, I think, sometimes have a hard time with that, going from a really social environment to kind of being secluded by yourself. But I was really bullied a lot in school, more so because I was a dancer as well. I was diligent about doing my homework, sometimes during lunch, so that way I had more time to go to class, or I would go to school with my hair in a bun, so that way I didn't have to do it in the car. And it kind of just led to some unpleasant experiences as a young kid. So when I did online school and I said, well, I could just focus on my studies and focus on ballet, I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. The hardest part is what you said was homesick. I hated sleepovers as a kid, couldn't do it. I'm such a family girl. Those first couple months was just absolutely brutal, having to leave my family. And I think the only thing that made it easier was actually the fact that I was with my grandparents because they were still family. But I also say on the flip side, it made it harder because they're family, but not my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my
Hmm.
close family. And that was hard. I mean, there were so many nights where I was getting in the car with them and I would just cry the entire night. And my nan was amazing. She would sleep in bed with me until I fell asleep because I would just cry myself to sleep because I missed home so much. But it was a sacrifice and a time that I look back on and I'm so grateful for the lessons that it taught me and the maturity that I had to grow into at such a young age in order to have this wonderful career that we professional ballerinas get to have. So it was so hard. And I think it did a lot of damage on the family too, if I'm being honest. Like all of a sudden my mom went from being a mom of three to a mom of two because her other kid isn't home at 13 years old. And that's a big difference for her, a big difference for my sister and my brother, who my sister became the older sister because I wasn't around. And it put a bearing on the family dynamic too. So it's a lot of complexities, I think, when it comes to the sacrifices that the families make for anyone who's trying to pursue a high performance athletic career, whether it be in sports or dance or acting or modeling or things like that. It can be a lot, but I still wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah. What were the biggest lessons you learned? at SCB? Is there anything you remember to this day that a teacher said or anything that was really pivotal?
I think the thing I remember the most from the student to professional transition of training at a big school like SAB to being a professional dancer in a variety of companies was one of my teachers, her name being Katrina Killian. Amazing, phenomenal teacher. She kind of was one of the ones when I first came to SAB that gave me the foundation of the balancing technique and taught me all of the little tiny details that sometimes I think get lost because you just don't have the time to teach it. And she really was on me in classes or afterwards if I had questions, taking notebooks. That was also the big thing too that I really think helped me was I'm a big note taker. And I'm so grateful that I did that as a student because it has helped me in the professional world to just write everything down because at some point you can only remember so much. It's nice to
Hmm.
have that knowledge written down somewhere when it happened so you can actually remember what that teacher said to you. So that's something that I still do to this day. If I get coaching on certain things, I always write things down. I always have a notebook. But the one thing that she told me, which didn't really resonate when I was younger, but does now, was at some point you have to become your own teacher.
Mm.
In a company, they don't have time to hold your hand and walk you to the grocery store. You have to be able to do it by yourself sometimes. And I'm not saying that there's not going to be people along the way who will help you, but majority of the work comes from you. She always said, just have that little teacher, imaginary teacher sitting on your shoulder, giving you those corrections or coaching elements or whatever you need to keep you motivated and inspired and positive. And that's always stuck with me, that just thinking I always have that little teacher on my shoulder to help me get to whatever I'm trying to succeed because it's so true. We're so busy and we're always doing so much that sometimes, you just don't have the time to be so hands-on and so personable, especially the way that they were at the School of American Ballet. I mean, for an hour and a half class, I would write probably 20 full-length pages of notes of corrections
Wow.
that were between me and maybe three other students. Like it was very hands-on and very particular. I love that saying quality over quantity. That's what I got from that school, and that's one of the big things it really taught me. And that little saying of just keeping that teacher on your shoulder has helped me grow as a dancer through my professional career by allowing myself to, I don't want to say be the coach, but be the driver of what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was a big shock to me in the transition from student to professional was going to company class and being like, oh, this is now my warm up.
Right.
Whereas before, that was the main event. I totally agree with that. And I love that you're a note taker because I'm a huge note taker too. I have the same, even as a professional, like you said, notes like that were really pivotal, but also just like this period is on 5 because then the next day I'd go into rehearsal and like look at my note and be like, oh my gosh, yes. There's so many notes you get in a day and you remember it as you're doing it. And you're like, oh, forgot that was
Exactly.
that change or whatever. And so just having that note to like refresh your memory is so huge.
I mean, especially when we're talking about ballets that have a lot of history too. I was lucky at the School of American Ballet. The balancing technique has been passed on through word of mouth, or if we're lucky, different videos that have been repurposed or notebooks. At some point, and I hate to say this, but a lot of the original people who had Mr. Balanchine have since passed. And so for the people that I did have that got to work with him personally, I mean, that to me is word for word. It's as close as you're going to get. And if that dissipates, the whole technique, the whole aspect of that part of ballet leaves, like the same does, the classical works, Bayadere and Swan Lake, the original versions, the original choreography, Pettipat, all those things, it's been passed on through generation to generation, and that's why it stays. And so that's definitely a huge passion of mine is making sure that what I am dancing, if it is something that was created before my time, that I'm doing it justice in the way that it was performed and the way that the choreographer wanted it to be performed, even if they're no longer here to tell us the pirouettes on 5. That element of becoming your own kind of stager and teacher for yourself is huge in the professional world.
Yeah, taking responsibility for yourself and not waiting for someone to come do it for you.
Yeah, I think that's also what you learn in school too, at least at the School of American Ballet. I mean, when I was younger, we would have classes at night. I would get up still at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, do schoolwork all day long, have an hour lunch break or half an hour lunch break, whatever, and then take the bus, commute in with my grandfather to then take my ballet classes, come home, eat dinner, do school at 14 years old. It's like having a full-time job. Then when I got older and it was, okay, we're still getting up early in the morning to go take class in the morning. Maybe I have a break, do some homework, take another class, stay, go to Pilates, do whatever I need, physical therapy to help my body, my physical aspect of dance, and then hopefully get all my homework done. So that way I could go to the ballet that night and see the New York City Ballet perform right across the street at Lincoln Center. So I could build that knowledge too. But then the ballet's over at 10:30, 11 o'clock, take the bus home, go to bed, and repeat. So all those things, like you're saying, responsibility, the discipline, you learn at such a young age that applies to, I personally think, not just dance, but really anything in life. Having a routine down and that maturity level, you just kind of have to grow into it much faster than a lot of other people because that's the way our art form is. If you don't give that kind of time and effort, it'll be a lot harder to make this profession become a reality.
For sure. There is so much dancers need to learn as they pursue a professional dance career. It can be completely overwhelming. Where do you even start? With your intention. To me, this is the first step in defining success on your terms. Once you have an intention for your career based on your core values, you can begin to hone in on a strategy to make your goals a reality. But without it, you will always feel out of alignment, out of control, and ultimately unfulfilled in your career. So, how do you figure out what success means to you? With the Brainy Ballerina Intentional Career Handbook. This is not just your ordinary book. The Intentional Career Handbook walks you through everything you need to think about as you embark on your dance career. With over 50 guided question prompts, you will dive deep into determining what really matters to you in a dance career based on your individual core values. By the end of this handbook, you will not only be crystal clear on your goals, but in the mindset you need to make it happen. Tap the link in the show notes to download your copy today and start pursuing your dance career with intention. So you graduated from SAB and you didn't get a contract that you graduated, right?
That's right.
What was that like? How did you deal with that?
That was probably still to this day the hardest year of my career. And not even year, it was like the hardest couple of weeks after I had graduated because all of my classmates had contracts. And the thing was, I originally did have a couple things in the works. Actually, I had been offered a contract, an apprentice contract with Semperoper Ballet in Dresden, Germany. And I turned that down for a variety of reasons. One being, like I said, I'm a family girl and I didn't want to move to Europe. And two, I still really had my hopes and dreams on getting into the New York City Ballet, if I'm being honest. And the pathway of how I was going through the school seemed like there was still hope. So I kept that hope for myself and kept working and kept growing. And I was very lucky that I had a lead role in my workshop performance, which is where, at the time, former artistic director Peter Martins was watching, and he seemed to really be pleased with my performance. A bunch of the teachers had voiced to me that I was maybe going to get in, and when I didn't, and nothing else was on the table, then at the time, I was just, what am I going to do? My family's going to back me up, but I don't have a school to go to now. I don't have a job to go to. So what does this mean? And luckily, being in the Big Apple, I was like, well, we are going to make this happen as best I can. And I told my parents I will do other things to supplement for point shoes and whatever I could afford on my own. But I said I'm going to work so hard on my training to make sure that when the auditions come around the next year, no company is going to turn me down. And that was really where my mental was. And I became a ballet obsessed crazy person, which I do not recommend because I think it was too much, if I'm being honest. But I also think it was the drive and the hunger that I needed in order to make my dreams come true with the situation, with the cards that I had been handed. So that's when I freelanced for a year. So I still stayed at my grandparents'. Luckily, I didn't have to pay rent or anything like that, which was amazing. I did work at a restaurant behind the scenes to clean utensils and things, get some extra cash to pay for point shoes. I substitute teachered at Steps on Broadway at their academy. I also worked the front desk there. I got a lot of my gigs because a lot of dancers that were regulars at the classes that I was taking at Steps saw me, this young 19-year-old kid who obviously had hunger and the potential to be a dancer, and why wasn't I in a company? That was always the question I got. Oh, where do you dance? Oh, I don't have a contract. What? You don't have a contract? And people were nice and people helped me. And there were gigs that I auditioned for that I didn't get that people recommended, but there were quite a few others that I did audition for through other people recommending them to me. That's what got it kickstarted. The first one being Nutcracker, where I was like, I don't even know where to begin because I've never done this before. I've only done the company audition, the cattle calls before video auditions were a thing. I
Mm-hmm.
was just, I went, oh my God, I don't even know to how many auditions in person. It was sometimes multiple a day where, okay, I would get cut from here and I would take the subway to Manhattan Youth Ballet and do another audition and then go to the city center and do a Broadway audition. And I was doing everything and anything possible. Something I think that a lot of people don't know about me is I actually auditioned for So You Think You Can Dance. That was one of the things that I said, well, if I can't be a professional dancer, we're going to dance somehow, somewhere. Maybe it's going to be on TV. And I actually made it through quite a few of the rounds. But I always think that's kind of interesting that, I
Yeah.
auditioned for them. So then I booked a Nutcracker gig on my computer. I sent like 200 emails to any Nutcracker application I could find. And I got hired not only to dance Snow in the Court of Ballet, but I got hired to dance their Dewdrop. And that was huge because it happened to be a company where they hired New York City Ballet to be Sugar Plum and Cavalier. So I was dancing alongside these amazing dancers, who were doing this side gig when they were off from New York City Ballet here at this smaller school. And I said, no, I am good. I am worthy. I deserve to be a professional dancer. I am going to make this happen. And that was a really big moment of validating that, okay, even though it didn't happen right now, I'm going to make sure it does happen. And that was with the Iglesias Ballet, who to this day still has my heart. And I call the director my fairy godfather because he's always been there for me and helped mentor me. And when he first hired me after the first performance, he said, I took a big risk on you because you're so young, you have zero experience, and I'm giving you this big part. But he said, after the first day of rehearsal, with your big smile and spirit and how hard you worked, I knew you were going to be the perfect fit for this. And I'm so happy that I took the chance on you. And forever, he's been such a beautiful person in my life. So I'm very grateful for Iglesias Ballet in that sense.
I love that. While you were freelancing, did you ever think, oh, I kind of like this, I want to keep doing this? Or were you always like, I want to have a full-time company contract?
I think because I came from the School of American Ballet, my mentality was I need to have a contract.
Mm.
I don't think I ever gave myself the option to be a freelancer because my dream was always in New York City Ballet to have a contract with a company. And so I think even if it was just get a contract for a year, I needed to get that checked off in order for me to give myself the freedom to make that choice. Because now I look back and I say, actually, my freelance year is some of my favorite memories as a dancer because it's much less competitive because everybody already knows what they're dancing because you're already casted. You're dancing because you need money, but also because you love it because it's too hard to be a freelancer if you don't love it,
Mm.
especially in a place like New York City where everything is so expensive. I met dancers who had 3 or 4 extra jobs outside of being a dancer. And I said, when do you have time to sleep? So if you're a freelancer as a dancer in New York City or really any city, it's because you love it. And that changes the environment of when you go into those rehearsals. And so a lot of my experiences, especially because I was young, a lot of dancers were older than me. They just kind of took me under their wing and they're just my family really to this day and some of my favorite memories. But I don't think that when I was freelancing that I ever had in my mind, this is what I want to do forever because I wanted to feel and be in it of what it's like. I'm a dancer with this company. I think I just wanted some kind of title when I was younger,
Mm.
specifically because I came from the School of American Ballet, the New York City Ballet, the
Yeah.
big names. I think I had to check something of that nature off my box for me to have the confidence to say that I'm worthy as a dancer, which I hate saying because I now think very differently, and I think the self-worth and the self-love and the mental health and the security as a person is hard to come by as a dancer. It's hard to come by, but it's more than important than the physical health and other aspects of our job. So I want to bite my tongue saying that, but I think that that's the truth. As a student coming from that environment, I really just wanted that kind of title to be able to say, hey, I made it here.
Oh, yeah.
I think differently now, but I think
Yeah.
that's what it was then.
I think that's very relatable. I think most dancers who train pre-pro ballet, like that is the way it feels. I never considered, like you said, any other path. Like I was
Yeah.
like company contract, that is what you do. So I definitely think that's very relatable to a lot of dancers.
I think it's a hard aspect too, because I think with social media now and press and things, there's a lot that can kind of morph your perspective of what it is to be a valuable dancer in this field. I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's what you put out there and how you present yourself that matters, not because you have a billion followers or because you can put your leg up to here. I don't think that's what matters personally for me for our art form of ballet.
Hmm.
It's a hard balance to find of saying, oh, I value where I'm at without the title, but I also do appreciate having something that has a name to back it up. For me, it's really now changed to I really appreciate the history of whatever I stand by. Like the element of saying, oh, I come from SAB for me now doesn't really have anything to do with the fact that, oh, I'm from SAB. No, it's the teachers that were more incredible dancers, I think, than we are now, and how they worked and the creativeness behind the ballets that were choreographed at that time, the musicality, the physicality of them that we still perform ballets from 100 years ago, things like that. Since being in Boston, learning about the history of this company, oh my God, Mr. Balanchine actually helped this company get on its feet, and Vila Verde was artistic director at some point, and this dancer danced here, and my previous boss at Kansas City Ballet was a former dancer here. Being a part of that history line, I think matters to me more now than being I dance here or I have this title or whatnot. But
Yeah.
it's a hard balance.
Yeah, that feeling of being part of something bigger than yourself.
That's perfect wording for it.
You got your first contract at Pennsylvania Ballet.
I did.
And how was that transition for you?
That was crazy. I was very lucky that a Balanchine stager found me at Steps on Broadway in William Berman's class, who has since passed. May his soul rest in peace. Beautiful teacher. I stood behind her at bar, and she said, "Oh, so where do you dance?" And I said, "Well, nowhere." And she said, "Well, we need to change that." And she was one of the ones that kind of helped guide me through the audition process and helped me get an audition with Pennsylvania Ballet at the time, which is now Philadelphia Ballet. But I got that second company contract, and I just went in guns blazing, taking every opportunity I could. I think the thing that was hard about that was I went into it thinking this is going to be my end all do all. I am here in the second company. They're going to love me. I'm going to maybe be a principal here one day. I just really wasn't the dancer that fit what the director was looking for. And it took me a long time to accept that I did come straight out of the School of American Ballet, had all this Balanchine training, and Angel Correa, who's still the director, was more from a classical background that I hadn't touched in years. Asking me to do simple things like turn your head and not tilt your cheek in épaulement, or when you do pirouettes, I need you to spot the corner and do two double bent plie, then a straight back fourth and spot the front. And there were things like that that I just didn't have in my body anymore because I hadn't done them since I was 12 years old at New Jersey School of Ballet. I worked so hard to be the dancer that I wasn't. It just turned out that I just wasn't the right fit for his company. That was a huge lesson that I learned, and I'm super grateful for it because it made me realize that just because one company doesn't want you doesn't mean that you're not worthy of another company or that you're not worthy of being a good dancer. That really changed the confidence in who I am as a dancer and as a person to say the worth and the value that I have for myself doesn't change just because of someone else's opinion. Doesn't mean I can't take it, doesn't mean I can't change because of someone else's critiques, of course. Always good to take in the criticisms and get perception and things from other people, but that's not the sole inside of how you feel about yourself when you look in the mirror every morning and you wake up and you brush your teeth. Huge lesson, really hard for me to learn, but a huge lesson. Very grateful for the path of being in the second company because it really taught me what it is to be a company dancer as well. At the Pennsylvania Ballet, I was covering a bunch of different company dancers. I got thrown in when people were getting injured, and I was kind of their go-to girl of if somebody went out and I didn't even know that spot, Courtney, you better be on top of it because you're going to get thrown in. And that happened to me quite a lot. Really, I was a company member without being a company dancer because we performed just as much with the main company, learning the exhaustion, the schedule, the responsibility of now okay, I'm not at my grandparents where my nan may cook me dinner every couple of nights. I'm on my own now fully with laundry and living in a different city, also a little further away from home. I think that was a good break in for me before I went on another path on my journey the following year. So still a beautiful company, still have so many friends in that company and wasn't meant for me. And I think
Hmm.
accepting that not everybody is going to like you
Yeah.
is okay.
Hmm.
Not saying it feels great, but it's okay.
No, right. When you were in the second company, at what point did you know you weren't going to have a contract? Were you auditioning pretty early, or how is that
Yeah.
going for you?
Yeah, at first, because I was getting put into a lot of company roles and the second company director liked me, all the ballet masters liked me, I didn't really see not getting a contract coming. In my head, I was like, I'm doing everything right. I'm getting cast. I think in February, we had some meetings with the second company director, and he had said, Courtney, there's not going to be a contract for you. I'm a little gutsy, I guess. I just said, I don't understand why. Like, can you give me a reason? Because I do this, I do that, and I listed all the things. And he said, if it was my choice, Courtney, he goes, I think you're a beautiful dancer. I do think you deserve a contract. I just don't think this company is the right fit for you. The second company director at the time, Eddie Tovar, he was one of the ones that kind of put that thought in my mind that maybe this is just not the right place. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to get a contract here, I have to audition somewhere, which of course in my mind was like, here we go again.
Hmm.
This was probably the fourth or fifth year that I was auditioning already. I wasn't even in a main company yet, so I felt the pressure for sure. And that's where I took it upon myself to reach out to a lot of different people, get different people's opinions. What variation should I film? Where should I audition? Where do you think would be a good place? Can you write me a recommendation letter? Just as much support that I could get from the dance community is what I did. I filmed on my iPod in the studio by myself late after a rehearsal at like 9 o'clock at night. I filmed my
Hmm.
variation. I like choreographed this, in my opinion, crappy contemporary neoclassical solo on myself in my ponytail in
Hmm.
warm up shorts. It was so not professionally done how video auditions are done now. And then I did a bunch of cattle calls. I was like, okay, here we go.
Does the mere thought of audition season make your palms start to sweat? Do you feel completely overwhelmed with getting everything together on top of your regular dancing schedule? I've been there, and I totally get it. As dancers, we spend hundreds of hours honing our technique and artistry. But when it comes to figuring out how to put together a resume or what to expect in a professional audition, we're often left to figure it out ourselves. That's why I put together the Ultimate Audition Guide. This is your one-stop shop for everything you need to tackle professional company auditions with ease. No more spending hours Googling and trying to piece together a somewhat coherent audition package. With this guide, you'll be ready to conquer audition season like a true professional. We're talking resumes, headshots, dance photos, dance reels, plus info on how to find auditions, what to wear, what to expect, how to budget, mindset tips, you name it, it is in this guide. You are ready for this moment. Head to the show notes, grab your copy of the Ultimate Audition Guide, and empower yourself with the knowledge to approach audition season like a true professional.
Again, I think the right place, the right time, the right leotard. And I originally got a second company contract with Kansas City Ballet that I signed, and I was very hesitant to sign it. It was the only contract that I had, but I just didn't want to be in a second company anymore. And even Angel Correa from Pennsylvania Ballet, when we had our final meeting before I had left the company, he was like, you are ready to be in a company. You deserve to be in a court of ballet. I just don't see you fitting in here and I don't want to waste your time. And I respect that so much for the honesty.
Mhm.
So when I got the second company contract again, I was like, oh my gosh, like another year. Like I've already been out of school now, going to be 3 years, and I still don't have a job. But I signed it and I said, I'm going to grit my teeth. I'm going to take a chance in Kansas City, whatever that means. And we're going to hope for better. And luckily, about 6 weeks later, I got a separate email saying, hey, a company spot opened up. Do you want it? And I was like, absolutely. Yes. So I like to say I got promoted without even being there, because I think I just, in that sense, maybe luck was on my side or the universe or God, whatever you want to believe in, that something knew that I was ready. And I'm
Mhm.
very, very lucky that I got then in the main company because it opened up just a whole new realm of what it meant to be a professional dancer for me.
Yeah. So, how was your experience going into a new company as a company member? What was that like for you?
That aspect was amazing because I was so excited to have rehearsals, be cast for things, audition for parts because Kansas City Ballet is an ensemble company. It's not ranked. So any member of the company is eligible to audition when stagers come in for different parts. And right off the bat, a Forsyth stager came in for In the Middle Something Elevated. And I got very lucky and I got cast as one of the principals, which was shocking for this little 19-year-old, or at the time, excuse me, 20-year-old. No, yes, 20 turning 21, who I'm trying to remember my years. I'm like, wow, it feels a
Right.
while ago, but still young, early 20s, I'll say, who has not very much experience getting this huge opportunity. And it just kind of felt like I'm in the right place now because they're seeing me.
Mm.
And I'm not just on the sides getting told, hey, you deserve opportunities, but we can't give them to you. It was, hey, you deserve these opportunities and we are going to give you them. And that was incredible for me. During Nutcracker, I think my first year, I did like 10 different parts. My brain was on fire. I don't sometimes understand how at that young I absorbed so much choreography, but it has helped me so much throughout the older parts of my career because of knowing how to pace myself from when I was younger, from getting so much thrown onto me. But being young, that was the hardest element. There wasn't really anybody in the company that was my age. Everybody was in their late to early 30s who had maybe already been in a previous company and were transferring to a smaller company to have a little bit of a less load and maybe start a family or different things like that, or just have a change in their career. Maybe they just didn't like where they were in their former company and went to KCB. So finding friends was really hard because
Mm.
I'm a city girl. I'm from the East Coast. All of a sudden, I'm in the Midwest. I don't have a car. There's no public transportation. There's no
Mm-mm.
subway. There's no ShopRite or normal grocery stores. And there's a lot of older dancers that, hey, you want to go get brunch on Saturday? Or, oh, well, I have to go, dog sit or babysit, or I'm taking care of my family, or, well, I'm already getting a massage because I'm 33 and I need to take care of my body. Or so that element was really hard, really, really hard. I felt really lonely those first couple of years because I was in a different place than a lot of other people in the company, and because of the competitive nature of ballet. And I was getting a lot of opportunity at the company. People just assumed, well, Courtney's the girl that's getting the parts and we don't like her and that's it. We're not going to invite her to the parties. And that was kind of it. And I was very lucky for FaceTime. I love FaceTime. Oh my God. Having FaceTime was the biggest thing. I was calling my family all the time and I had a great little apartment that I loved. And my mom and my dad came to visit me so much, which was great. But it was definitely a hard transition. And one teacher of mine, who's also a mentor, who I love, who helped me become a professional dancer, especially when I was freelancing, Nancy Bielski from Steps on Broadway, she advised me, being a dancer is really lonely sometimes. Are you sure you want that? If you can't tell, I'm a very personable, social person. I like to chit chat. I like to meet new people. I like to do things. Learning how to be comfortable with doing that by myself, just you're going to be alone a lot of the time. When you're in the studio, you're focused on your work, you're in your own thoughts. And then when you leave the studio, maybe you don't have a group of friends. You're going to be doing things by yourself or you're going to be stuck in your apartment. And I said, well, I'm going to learn how to be on my own. And so I've become very independent and became very independent in that sense. But I think that was probably the hardest part about transitioning to a main company, was kind of finding where I fit in, because I was this younger girl from a different part of the country. And, I had experience, but not enough compared to a lot of other people who have been in the corps for years. And all of a sudden I'm getting the big part. And it made certain things difficult. But I think the biggest thing that I've taken away from that is just patience.
Mm.
It's also the easiest thing to say and the hardest thing to do. All things come with time and patience. And eventually I found who is now my best friend of all time, who I love. I call him my gay husband, or sometimes he looks like my brother because he has red hair and we look similar. And he came a couple years into the company and he ended up leaving the year after. And 3, 4 years later, we're still friends and we FaceTime all the time. And sometimes you just need that one person, that's going to help you through. And there are other people as well through the company that I still love and adore. But yeah, it just took some time, to adjust.
Yeah. Do you feel like being in an unranked company was more competitive than being in a ranked company?
I think the elements of the competition are different. I think in the ensemble company, there are ranks, I think, in
Hmm.
the director's mind a lot of the times, because there are the more senior dancers who are your principals, who you just know. They've done their time, they do get cast most naturally in the bigger roles. But every once in a while, like when I came in, it's going to turn the tables around. So I think the competitiveness only happens when it's something that everybody knows it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like doing
Mhm.
Forsyth in Kansas City was extremely rare. Doing Forsyth here in Boston in a ranked company is a little more normal. They do a little bit more programs where there are contemporary, neoclassical, edgy works. So it might be a little bit different when it comes to that element. The bigger thing when it comes to the competition is the camaraderie of the company. In a smaller company, we sure are competitive with each other, but at the end of the day, I might be dancing the core with this girl today, but then tomorrow she's doing Odetto Deal. At the end of the day, you don't have a say in the casting. Whatever you get, you get. You want me to be a tree? Okay, I'm going to be a tree. Whatever. You want me to be the lead? I'll be the lead. That's kind of how it
Yeah.
works in the ballet world. If you can't become just satisfied with that it's out of your control, I think you're probably going to be living a very tortured life, which is really hard. So I try my best to, whatever you're going to get, just be happy with it because at the end of the day, all we want to do is dance.
Yeah.
If you're in it for a different reason, then you might be in the wrong field because it's way too painful and long hours and crazy sacrifices to be unhappy. But in the ensemble company, because there is so much change all the time, because we're smaller, the company naturally gets this kind of camaraderie, I'll say, where you see everybody at least at some point in the day to say hello, or, maybe you're partnering with them and then you partner with somebody else the next day and you see everybody. A full call rehearsal is everybody because the entire company has to be there to do the whole ballet because there's not that many of us. Whereas in a ranked company, there are dancers like when I first joined Boston that I didn't even meet till 6 months in because
Wow.
we weren't in the same rehearsals because the company's bigger. We're doing so many different works all the time. Everybody's different places. In a full call for Cinderella or something, the girls are going to do their part and then they're going to leave because we're going to go rehearse Bayadere in a different studio while the men are doing their stuff. So I think the competition becomes a little bit more heavy. It can become more heavy because you're not seeing everybody on a daily basis as often. And when those stagers come, they may be watching one class. The director may be teaching one class that maybe he's going to decide now or something. And so I think the energy can be different in the ranked company for sure, or just a bigger company, I'll say, with more
Yeah.
people. More people, more competition.
Sure. What prompted your move to Boston Ballet?
Two different elements: growth and family.
Mhm.
Being in Kansas City, I found my places that I really liked. The facility, of the studios and the theater, the Kaufman Center, it is just state of the art. It is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it's really gorgeous.
Have you been?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The
Yeah.
stage is the bounciest stage I've ever been on. The backstage is so easy. The dressing rooms are on the same level. Everything
Mhm.
is just brand new, state of the art. It's beautiful. And it's right next to the Symphony Hall, which is also one of the most gorgeous places you can sit and just listen to the music. The acoustics in there, just, oh, they'll give you chills. But my grandparents used to be able to come out and watch me dance for a while. And then, 70, 80 years old. I'm lucky I still have them alive, but their health was not in a place where they could fly anymore. They were like my second parents to me, and not having their support out there or not being able to get my family. My sister didn't watch me dance until my last year at Kansas City Ballet because she couldn't take time off of school when she was doing her master's, or then when she finally got her first job to come out and see performances. And I kind of just thought, I made all these sacrifices. Of course, I'm dancing for myself, but my family made sacrifices too, and they don't get to see any of this. That just started to weigh a really big toll on my heart. I wanted to be closer to my family. I also think that when you don't picture yourself to build a life where you are, it's hard to want to keep growing in that environment. That was the other aspect of it is I'm born and raised in New York City, being very honest. I'm a quick, fast-paced person. I like to go and do things, and Kansas City was just not the place for me. It didn't suit my personality. I wasn't happy living in the city itself. Of course, I found my happiness, but I just got bored of it, and I wanted something new. And I also wanted something new from my dancing as well. I felt like I kind of kept getting cast in certain things, and I just felt like I wanted to be pushed in something different. And so I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I haven't auditioned in a really long time. After I had gotten my job with Kansas City Ballet, I didn't audition until the last year that I left. So that's also what is interesting is I never thought, oh, I'm going to leave or I wanted to change. I just thought, let's see what happens.
Mhm.
who knows? And I was really lucky. I got a call and, hey, we have a contract for you at Boston. And I said, what? Like I couldn't even believe it because I'm closer to home. I also went to the Boston Ballet summer course for 2 years. It was a dream company of mine for a very long time. It was, if I didn't get into New York City Ballet, I wanted the Boston Ballet. This is as close as I'm going to get. It's a city that I love, studios that I think are absolutely beautiful. I kind of felt like I had the best of both worlds. And I said, well, I can't turn that down. And yeah, that's what made me make this change, really. I kind of just followed my heart and what I thought would be
Mhm.
best for me, even if that meant it was hard in other aspects,
Yeah. And I really relate to that, wanting to be closer to family and having that be a priority. And I feel like sometimes that's looked down upon a little bit in the ballet world of like that being a priority because it kind of feels like you just have to go wherever you get a job. And that can be true. But I felt the same exact way. Like I am from the Midwest and I always wanted to live in the Midwest. And I love it here. My first contract was in Tucson and it's a beautiful place to live. It's gorgeous, but it wasn't
Mm.
home. And the whole time I was there, I couldn't picture building a life where I would stay there. It just like didn't feel right to me. My goal was to be in driving distance of my family. Even if it was still not around the corner, I was like, I want to be able to hop in a car because being from Michigan and being in Arizona, it was a 30-hour drive, you
Yeah,
know? So
that's how it was for me in Missouri. Same thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
When I moved to Missouri, I was like a 10-hour drive home. It wasn't like around the corner, but I could feasibly get in a car and drive home. And I was like, okay, now I feel like I'm back in my place in the Midwest. It just felt right. And I think there's something to be said for that. And that's okay. Like, that's okay for that to be a priority for you in your dance career, is where you're living and feeling at home and feeling like you're going to build a life there beyond your dancing.
I think it's such a hard thing that people forget to talk about as well, because there is a point. I mean, I moved to the Midwest. I moved to Kansas City Ballet because it was the job that I got. And I'm so
Hmm.
grateful that I wouldn't change it for the world. I really wouldn't. But there was a point where, okay, I'm 25. Your dance career is going to end at some point. Unfortunately, it's a very hard thing, I think, to accept. It's something that in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be 30 in a couple of years. It's a scary thought. Like, what are you going to do when you're done dancing? And you want to be happy with a lot of elements of your life besides just what you do in the studio, because there is a lot more to life than that. It was at the point in my career where I felt like I was getting satisfied and feeling comfortable in my career that I could explore what else was around where I was in my living environment. And I said, wait, I really just don't fit here. That aspect is hard for people to kind of wrap their heads around because we are trained wherever you get a job, you have to follow the work. We don't have thousands of available jobs everywhere. This is not how it is. If you land a job in another country, which a lot of my friends have done, you go. And even if it's
Mm.
temporary, you go and you try to go experience it to get more on your resume and get that experience. But I also think there should be a conversation that says, if that's not what you really want, like it's
Mhm.
okay to say no. It's okay to not make that choice and freelance for a year. And maybe something else will come around that will show you this is another opportunity. Maybe this is where you'll want to go. And that's where I feel really lucky in my career is even if I didn't necessarily make all those choices for myself because, oh, I didn't get a contract, well, I freelanced. Oh, I didn't get the company I wanted, but I got set company. Oh, I never planned about going to the Midwest, but I got that opportunity to go somewhere else and experience it, but make the choice. Actually, I don't really want to live here. There's a lot of things to the maturing element of becoming an adult as a person, not just as a dancer, that gets skipped over, I think, because we're so fast tracked into the professional field. So I agree, like you're saying, it's a conversation that definitely it's so important, but it kind of gets overlooked.
Yeah. What do you like to do when you're not dancing?
Oh my gosh. I'd love to do a lot of things if I'm being honest. When my mom is in town, that's always my favorite, especially that I have her around now. And my sister and my brother too. I've been lucky that we've all been reconnecting since I've been able to be home more and I can go home for parties over the weekend because I can take a train that's only 5 hours long, or my mom will drive up the car and then we'll all go back to Jersey and I'll go home for Labor Day. I was just home for Labor Day and we went paddle boating on the little lake or whatever. But when I'm here in Boston, probably some of my favorite things to do are go to some of the local, which is funny because in Kansas City, there's always local things everywhere. So that's maybe where I get that from. But I love going to like the local coffee shops or local cafes and just sitting and writing in a notebook or journaling, or I love word search puzzles because I think it's a good way to kind of keep your brain going without really having to think. But I also love walking around and finding things that just happen to come about. Like there was a day a couple weeks ago where I just happened to be walking around the city and there was a little open market and I found some really cute vintage jackets that I bought. Or there was another day where, I decided to just take a walk around the park and then there was a local artist singing that I sat and listened to the live music. Also, a big thing for me is I've always grown up on the beach over the summers. So when I've been in Boston, well, I wasn't here so much last summer, but I was here at least this summer. To go to the beaches here near the Cape and things, having water around is amazing. I just love even to sit over the harbor or near the Charles River and just kind of admire a beautiful sunset or people watch. There's so much to life that you can enjoy as if you just open your eyes and see it. So that's really my favorite thing is just finding things that I wouldn't expect to find. So yeah, but one of my most recent things at the moment, because theater is in right now, is going to see some different shows that are in town. Les Mis was here on the tour on Broadway. I saw Frozen last year with a couple friends, and just the other week I went to go see The Queen of Versailles, which was a really cool show with Kristen Chenoweth, and I got to hear her sing live. So that
Wow.
was really cool. So I kind of love to do all and everything. So sit home, watch Netflix, but a lot of
Oh,
things.
yeah. I love that. Okay, last question. If you had to give aspiring professional dancers one piece of advice, what would you tell them?
If I had to give an inspiring dancer a piece of advice, I think firstly, I would say just believe in yourself. We take so much criticism from the front of the room that it can be hard to remember that you have the power and your love for the art form is what's going to drive you through. And believing in that and holding on to that is what will carry you through because everyone can do a perfect technical element, but not everybody can share their passion with others. And I think holding on to that belief in yourself is so, so important, as well as this is a testament to my mom at the moment, but we have this little phrase of just, and I said at some point, maybe I should get it tattooed because I've always said this, but I also just think never give up. If you really want something in life, there are so many opportunities. You just have to keep pursuing and ask for help where you can and just keep that hope and drive and hunger for what you want and you can achieve it. I really believe in that because I am a testament to that. I had everything I could have ever wanted going to these big schools and everything, and it all kind of crashed and crumbled right in front of my eyes. And the one thing that kept me going and that made it possible is I just told myself, I'm never going to give up. This is what I want so badly that nothing is going to stop me from achieving my goals in a healthy and positive and nurturing way with the support of my family. So, yeah, I think those two phrases are so key. And I hope that young dancers really just take that to heart and try and run with it as best they can for whatever their hopes and dreams are. Because it sounds silly, but living your dream, it can be a reality. And when it is,
Hmm.
it's a very special, very, very special thing. And I'm very honored to say that I get to do that every day as my job.
Yeah.
It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. If any dancers want to connect with you, where can we find you? What's your Instagram handle or website or whatever you want to share?
Well, at the moment, I just got a TikTok, which is at knitting without the K, and my Instagram matches that as well. Otherwise, find me Courtney Knitting kind of anywhere on Facebook or obviously at the Boston Ballet website. There's always different ways that you can connect with us there.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Courtney. This was a really inspiring conversation. I'm really
Oh,
grateful to have gotten to talk to you today.
Caitlin, it has been so wonderful. What wonderful questions I got to answer. I'm like so honored
Good.
too that this is my first podcast. So thank you so
Yay!
much.
Of
Yeah,
course.
so exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. If you found this episode insightful, entertaining, or maybe a bit of both, I would so appreciate you taking a moment to leave a rating and hit subscribe. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll join our community of dancers passionate about building a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. Plus, your ratings help others discover the show too. I'll be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, Be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Brainy Ballerina for your daily dose of dance career guidance.